Good afternoon. Thanks, Rich. Based on his introduction, you might be wondering, what is this topic about and why is it, sure, yeah, and why is it being presented in a demand response section? I really don't know. It's confusing to me just as much as you are. It must have to do with the DSM, but it is a different topic. I won't be talking about demand response. So we're switching gears to a bit more about program side of things and how we set up programs in the information structure for it to succeed, right? And so I want to provide some information about why I'm talking about this and why where's my credibility in talking about these. And first, I want to talk about what we do in Toronto. So I work with Clear Results, and I think a lot of you know we work in more than 70 cities in the United States and Canada. In Toronto, it's a little different what we do. We work with the Independent Electricity Systems Operator of Ontario. They're awesome. They're our client. One of them is actually here. And what we do is being a technical reviewer of complex industrial programs, such as CHP, HVAC, compressed air, whatever it may be. And we evaluate and provide recommend incentives for participants in various sectors. And so we work with utilities and different participants in all kinds of sectors working on pretty much any type of project. And so that comes with complex challenges because these programs are quite complicated. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's actually providing more opportunities for different types of participants. It's catering to different types of sectors. So that's good. People have options. But that's a challenge for us as sort of an administrator of the program and the reviewers because just the sheer amount of information that we have to track and cater to different types of participants and programs. And so when I say we have faced those challenges, I mean it, and we have come to some solutions to resolve those problems as well. And so in this presentation, what I want to do is really talk about common sense, best practices in setting up a program for success and tying it into a case studies, success stories. So it's not going to be a very technical presentation. So in 2016, Global CEO Outlook report, this was done by KPMG, 84% of global CEOs have expressed concerns in the decisions that they're making and the quality of data that they base their decisions on. That's more than 4 out of 5 people being concerned about the decision-making process. And that can lead to the lack of precision or lack of commitment to the decision that you're making. And so that's a big problem that we have to solve. IBM says over $3.1 trillion have been the cost as a result of poor data. And that includes not just the DSM industry, obviously. That includes all kinds of, the big IT firms. But just the sheer scale of it, when you translate that into DSM industry as well, that's going to be costly. And having worked in the utility sector and directly working with utility billing, interval data, you can tell that there's going to be errors, and that does become costly if you do make decisions based on them. In the same CEO report, 25% of the CEOs have expressed that improving data analysis capabilities is their very top key objective, and that's over winning new clients or cybersecurity, which I know have been a very hot topic in this conference. And so this conference so far, past 2 days, has been great. There's been a lot of chatter and discussions about data analysis, how to use utility metering data for better opportunities, identifying projects and pursuing them. I want to take a step back from that and talk more about how do we improve data quality from the program side of things. So we want to, when we start up a new program, we want to ask some questions to set it up for success. First is, what are the fundamental processes in a program, right? And this could be applied to a program or at a project level. I am alluding to programs, but I think it's applicable to smaller projects as well. So we want to think about the fundamental processes. Then, and in our case, it's quite complicated because of as I explained, number of participants in different sectors and variations in the type of deliverables and type of reports. So we got to map that out. What are the expectations both at the end of the process and during the process? So when we talk about program, the end deliverable might be like a program evaluation report at the end of the contract term. And that could be a regular thing as well as an annual report, right? Technical reference manuals, I think every state does that as well. That could happen. And we want to think about what we have to deliver 5 years down the line, 4 years down the line. And lastly, how do you tell how well the program is doing? And as a program designer, you want to look 4 or 5 years down the line and ask yourself, what do I want to see later on to tell myself that this program delivered and was successful, right? So in a DSM context, we have to think about what kind of metrics we want to record. And I've provided some random word jumbles that I believe is to be pertinent to DSM industry. Savings, contract, performance, incentive, efficiency, whatever it could be. There could be a lot more. These are just what I could think of, but and there's going to be a lot more. And that will depend on what kind of program you're delivering for a particular sector or type of participants, right? But we have to ask the question of, should we be recording or tracking all this data, right? That's a lot of information. And typically when we track more information, and this is obviously not a statistically proven model, but when you increase the quantity of information that you want to track, that's going to be tracking the amount of effort level required to track them. It's also inversely proportional to the quality of information that you're going to have. And that's not a definitive statement, but more likelihood of error that's going to happen because of more opportunities and more interaction with the data that you're having. So where we want to get to is something better, right? It's something more like this, where although we're going to have more effort required and possibly less quality of data, we want to minimize that, right? We want to keep it most optimal as we, track more information for ourselves. And so how do we get here? And so I want to talk about a database and how we set up a database. And I'm not going to get into technical side of things because I'm not a software engineer, but a database should be catered and structured to fit your program and your processes, right? Your programs are all custom. It's specific to your jurisdiction and the processes and type of participants that you're catering to. So it should be customized, and as such, the database and the information system to support you should also be customized in turn, right? So it is a tool to help you. You need to utilize it to your advantage. And we want to ask these type of questions, right? So what are we tracking? We looked into that already about the number of metrics type of metrics that we want to track in the DSM program. How are we going to track it? Is it going to be an in-field person tracking on a mobile device? Are they going to log it manually on paper? Where are we going to track it? Type of platform. This more has to do with like a type of software platform that you might be using, right? Why you should be tracking those information. That's, I think, one of the most vital questions. Is this value add to you? Is this value add to the stakeholder? Is this going to help us later on? And I think you need to drop it if it's something that you think might be helpful, but probably not. If you're on the verge, maybe not worth it to track it, so drop it, right? And then lastly, when and who, I want to tie that up together because that really has more to do with the process improvement side of things. And so it's very important to know and understand who should be tracking the data when, right? The right amount of information at the right time by the right person. You want to minimize the data movement from point A to point B. It's like a broken telephone, right? When you have multiple people passing on the same information, that's more prone to causing errors and reducing the quality of data. So does it make sense for a field personnel to enter directly into the system? And so can we provide an infrastructure to help them do that and achieve that, right? And then when should they be reporting it? It's important for the data to be recorded at the present time, right? You don't want to wait a couple months to record something into the database. That's no longer recent, and you might have a difficult time following up and trying to verify whether this information is correct or not. So I think this applies to really any scenario. You want it to be recent and immediate. So in a data process, I want to summarize it into 4 steps. And there's a record, query, analyze, and report. And there's been a lot of informative sessions this conference. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to look at all of them because they were at the same time. But a lot has been on the analyze side of things. What I'm going to do is briefly touch on that, but also the other factors. But before we get there, I just want to wrap up about a little bit of technical side of the database, and it's about the database structure. A database is, far too often we see people set up a massive spreadsheet to track different type of information, and I'm actually very guilty of this as well. A couple of years back, doing this, we have. Very often do I see people starting to track something on a spreadsheet in a couple of columns, and then eventually as the time progresses, as you want to track more information, as the program have progressed and you have learned new things and wanted to track new things, you keep adding stuff to the side, and eventually you end up having a ginormous, humongous database, a spreadsheet, right? And then you have to scroll left to right to look at the information that you want. That's not an efficient way to do it. That's actually a very risky way to track your information. So spreadsheet is not a database. In fact, I should say it's not a good database. And what you want to do instead is break up the information into its functional or stakeholder groups. You want to segment them. And so when we looked at the word jumble before, and there is a bunch of metrics, you want to draw circles around the relevant information that goes together. Right, and so that could be, in our example, that could be, I'll get to it in a bit, but it might be about a participant, you want to group them together. It might be about savings information, cost information, you want to chunk them together. So you might be wondering, if I am separating them all out into different databases and tables, how do we bring them all together back in? Because that's really the reason why we started tracking in a spreadsheet, right? And that's the beauty of setting up an information structure in the right format, right? And this is really common sense in the industry, but something like a relational database management structure does that for you, right? And there are other database structures that I won't touch because my belief is the relational database is the most commonly used feature in the industry. But also, and there are pros and cons, but the negatives are not very applicable to a typical DSM type program, to track DSM type program. It's the lack of relational database is scalability, but that happens when we're talking about trillions of data. So unless we're talking about utility or IT type of firm, relational database should be just fine for any type of DSM program that we can think of, where we track at an application level or project level, right? And so it provides more flexibility and more maintenance and et cetera. So it sets you up for success in the right structure. So a case study, I want to link it to what we did to move from this really bad spreadsheet format into a relational database structure. And we made a hefty investment to do this, and it took time, but it was well worth it in the end. So we had been tracking this industrial program for the ISO on a SharePoint database on the web, right? And that was actually our work platform, where we track the KPIs and everything and the document storage. It was in a spreadsheet format on the web, just that, it's not in Excel. So what we did was break them up into the functional groups, right? We had the contracts table, we had the project costing database, we had information about hours that we spent on each project, or the utility information, what we did in our MMV reports, measurement verification, what was our conversion rate, everything like that. We've segmented them into their own functional groups and tied them into a centralized table where we track the common ID, right? The application ID or the participant information. So what this did for us, it was to be able to better manage data and allow us to see when certain things have been changed, so we can make sure that the data integrity is intact. It was easier to maintain and also built us up for providing and making up better reporting. Before, if we had to pull ad hoc reports, do analysis in a spreadsheet, in this format, we were able to dynamically pull information that we wanted to and generate it automatically to different stakeholders, which was a win-win-win for everyone. So going back to the 4 steps, and the main intent of this really about improving data quality, I wanted to share some examples and tips on how to make improvements on the data recording side of things. It's important to embed the data entry as part of the process. So this has a lot more to do with process improvement. But when I say chunk the information into groups, you also want to make sure that the right information is provided to the right stakeholders and data entry people at the right time as part of their process. So that already addresses when, who, and how, right? And so we should consider who is best suited and minimize the data movement, which I talked about, and reconsider, as always, is this most optimal, and make further improvements. Automate data entry wherever possible. I think this is quite obvious. When you enter some sort of information, you want to be able to see a specific information about the project or record, right? Say your analysts or data entry people are entering savings data or incentive data for a particular project. You want to show them information about that participant when they do enter the data. Don't keep it arbitrary or out of vision. Make it visible to them so they know that they're entering for a specific person or participant, and they may learn a thing or two or catch a thing or two, right? You could do a lot of things like automation, like syncing with emails, or the work platform that you might be using at your workplace. There's a lot of web solutions, right? Can that be integrated with the data entry process? And data entry is a very costly but necessary element of any type of program or project, right? It's manual. There's always going to be some manual elements unless everything is fully automated on the web. And auto-populate fields that are purely dependent on something else. So a good example would be an incentive amount, right? If it depends on kilowatt hour savings value and it's at a specific dollar value, you don't have to enter that incentive amount in dollars. You can make sure that that's auto-calculated, but that's clearly not obvious in the cases that I've seen, because we had people enter savings value as well as incentive amount at the same time. But there is absolutely no need to do that, right? There could be other things. It could be a logical process type of thing, like what is the stage that follows the current stage, right? What happens after? Who is the right stakeholder after the current stage? Can we trigger those changes automatically through some sort of a code, right? So placing constraints on data entry. So this one, I want us to do a little bit of an exercise, so that, and I'm sure everyone has a credit card or an ID, piece of ID. If anyone wants to take them out and hold it up or something. I want everyone to just look at your own thing. What I was going to do was ask you guys to hold up the credit cards and take a photo and ask you to flip it. So I have your, no. You guys know what your credit card looks like or piece of ID looks like and what kind of information is there. And we frequently access the web for various reasons like banking or buying stuff on Amazon, my favorite thing to do. And they request you to enter information in a specific format, right? Like a credit card information, you can't enter 15-digit data. It's not going to let you. You can't enter 6-digit alphanumeric content into a zip code unless you're in Canada. And so restrict stuff to the way you want it to be. Make sure you enforce people or restrict people to enter it in a way that you want it to receive, which prevents any sort of erroneous entries, right? You can add different kind of conditions that will fit your needs to the program. And lastly, flagging suspicious entries. So this is sort of related to the constraints, but it doesn't restrict you to enter the data. In fact, what it does is it warns you, right? Is the incentive amount too high for this type of project? This is actually something that we are doing right now in our office to set a benchmark or a threshold based on previously entered information, right? Because we now have the database structure in the right way, that we are able to access the average value of all the projects submitted for compressed air or something. And then we would be able to tell for a given sized compressed air what would be an appropriate cost, right? And then when someone enters something that's way beyond the threshold, you get warned. And that could catch an error, like it might be missing a zero, it might have an extra zero. And that really happens. And so, being suspicious of data, not manually, but allowing the system to do it for you, that's a big advantage for you when you have the information structure. And so look at the data with a suspicious eye. Right? A case study for this is our delivery and helping the delivery of the Energy Manager program, which is the hot thing right now, and very well regarded in the industry. When this started, so the Energy Manager program, what it does is fund dedicated professionals at different organizations to deliver energy savings, capital savings, but also change the culture of conservation at those facilities through strategic energy management or delivering operational behavioral savings. And they get paid based on the performance that they achieve, right? And so when this started a long time ago, and when I first got involved, the reports that we had to receive from various energy managers, they had to report their projects to us so we can keep a database. They were done in a Word format. And so they had like a page each for a different project. And so you can imagine what a nightmare that was to be able to translate that information into the database that we needed. So the first thing we did was change that into at least a spreadsheet format. And so that it needs to cater to everyone in the different industry and different organizations with different security settings. So Excel was most widely available to everyone, so that's what we used. And we structured in the format that we wanted to receive in. The next step we did was restrict the information that they could enter into a particular field. So in the savings information, we didn't want to see any letters, so we only allowed the numeric value to be entered. That's obvious. In the utility field, we provided drop-down options so they can select one of the utilities in the province. In the participant info, they didn't need to fill out anything. It was auto-populated based on who they were, right? And so it was an evolutionary process, and we added on one by one. First, we changed the structure. We restricted it. We automated it. And what was the other thing? And then we also provided like a flag suspicious stuff, right? If it was beyond the X number of megawatt hours for a particular type of program or project, it was flagged as red, although it didn't restrict them from entering it. And what this did was allowed us to really use the data for different purposes. And I'm running out of time, so I'll be really quick. So it allowed us to really use this for like a web platform for their own online community so they can see their peers' performances and talk about it, generate different reports like dashboards, executive summaries so they could present it to their upper management or online performance view. All of that was possible because we actually made those changes to the reporting structure. Data querying, there are a bunch of queries available on the web, and you can make it compatible with the powerful business intelligence tools to make dynamic changes and see the impact of it. But the key point about this is make sure that you are preparing the data in the right format so it is ready for the analysis that you want it to do. And that's what I want to talk about here, is about thinking in reverse. What do you want to do? What conclusions do you want to draw? And based on that, do I know what kind of information I need to track? And that will tell you how to pull the information together, right? And so when we get to data reporting, there are 3 different types of data reporting. There's the ad hoc, routine, and improved. Whereas, ad hoc and routine, they're probably one time or somewhat regular, semi-regular reports. But we want the reports to be a very improved feature where it provided our stakeholders to have their inputs or engage their own way and draw really strategic insights. And so this was basic, better, and best, and we only want to do best. And so a case study for the tying together querying, analyzing, and reporting was the province's activity reports. And this was a new thing for us, that once we had the information system ready and structured in the right way, we were sitting with a pile of data that was not being leveraged to its full extent. So what we started doing was providing monthly automated reports to all the utilities, more than 60 utilities in the province, on all of their programs that they never really had visibility on. They submitted it, they have the process going, but they never saw what was on the other side of the wall. And what that allowed to do was we were able to engage utilities more frequently about stuff that was on delay, stuff that was being on hold. We were able to get those going. And so that ended up with a happy customer because they were able to get incentive payments faster. We were happy because we were able to process them, actually review them. And it was a win-win situation for everyone. In fact, the report got integrated into a very critical process of a program and payment process. So, had we not had the right format or information structure, this was not possible at all. This could not have been possible. So this was an unseen, result that we could not anticipate, just happened to happen. And so the key learnings from our experience of making sure that the information structure is sound and credible and best suited for dynamic reporting. Complex DSM programs are manageable. The PSU program and energy management program is very complicated. It's not simple in nature due to variations. And if this is possible, if you can draw quality insights from how long is point A to point B taking, why is this being held up, because of who, this is very much possible on prescriptive type programs, right? Transition from spreadsheet to database format is well worth it. It is costly and time consuming, but again, it does provide unseen opportunities. And so in summary, I try to consider all the metrics, keep the value at once, think about the process improvement, tying it together, and really use it to improve the program. Now, I believe the actions that we have taken to improve our information structure has definitely improved the quality of the program in a way that the service that we're providing to the utilities and participants have increased by reducing the response time and the review time, but also at the same time identifying the key areas of improvement that was needed to be tackled. Thank you.